Ladies and gentlemen, now I am discussing one Sri Lankan experience of poetry and Ranasinghe's Auschwitz from Colombo. Auschwitz was a concentration camp that was established in Poland, Nazi camp. Many Jews were slaughtered there using poisonous gas. Such a camp. And Ranasinghe originally was Anne Solomon. She was from Germany. She was a Jew. All her family members were murdered by Nazi violence, and she was the only survivor of her family. She fled to London, and in her age 16, age 13, she fled to London, and there she was trained to be a nurse. Later, she was working as a nursing officer in London Hospital, and then Professor Ranasinghe married her. Thus, she became Anne Ranasinghe. She came to Sri Lanka, and on seeing the Sri Lankan background of violence, she wrote poetry. She is called a Holocaust writer. Right? Therefore, the Sri Lankan situation is seen by a foreign eye. Right? She has read an article in a magazine regarding Auschwitz camp from Poland. On reading that, right, through imagination, she writes this poetry. Colombo, March. The city white fire. In Sri Lanka also there have been some events of violence, right, throughout the history. But in comparison with other countries, right, it's not that far terrible, right? In comparison with Nazi violence, Nazi killed more than 6 million. The city white fire that forced through vehement trees burnt into flames, and only a faint but nearing wind stirring the dust from relics of foreign invaders thrown. The poet refers to relics of foreign invaders, that mean descendants of Dutch, especially burghers. On this for littoral, by chance or greed, this stray memorial, the odd word pronounced, some they descendants of Dutch and colonizers, they mispronounce the word, odd words, and also Sri Lankans pronounce English word not in the correct form. You know, we Sri Lankans are very much Sri Lankan in English experience, especially pronunciation. The poetry is satirical towards the behavior of people. The Book of Laws of Pile of Stones. We know that in 83 violence also, people got weapons into their hands to kill Tamils. That's why Book of Laws, Pile of Stones. Or maybe some wild deed. There have been some wild deeds in Sri Lanka. Once there was another city, and the poet Sri Lankan violence has background issues also. Sometimes July, August, March, March are hot months. There is a belief that the environmental heat, right, motivate people to involve in violence. But in that Auschwitz camp, that Nazi violence, killed people while there was winter. Winter is environmental cold, you know. That's why she says once there was another city, but it was cold. The trees leafless and clearly thin ice on the lake. On the lakes also, there was thin ice. The environment was very cold. Therefore, our argument that the environmental heat, right, stimulates man to fall into violent action is wrong. It was that winter so hard upon the early morning street, and frost flowers carved in hostile window panes. Window panes also, there was mist. It was that winter. The poet tells that Nazi committed their violence when it was winter also. Yet only yesterday, half a world away and 25 years later, I learned the narrow corridor. After 25 years, she has read that article about that Nazi violence, about the narrow corridors. At the end of a hall, 4 feet by 4, that means strangling room were there, gas chambers were there. Into gas chambers, people were pushed naked and then gas was released. through which they pushed them all the children to, straight down on a shaft of steel, 13 feet long, dark and icy cold. When it is cold, that dark place, people were murdered. Actually, children were also. Do children have any connection with that? No. Hitler's army killed many Jews, so many, 6 million of Jews. Onto concrete floor of what they call the strangling room. Dear God, the strangling room. The poet asked, Dear God, where is God? Where was God? What did God do till such things happen? Where they were stunned the children to by heavy mud or wooden mallets. They were beaten with mallets, garroted, strangled, and then impaled on pointed iron hooks. Impales mean make sit on iron hook. I am glad of the unechoing street burnt white in the heat of many tropical years. Find Sri Lanka is described as a place free of violence in comparison with those countries. Till of late, Sri Lanka experienced peace, right? Though there were some events of violence, we had peace here. Sri Lanka was a haven of peace, not heaven, haven. I am glad of the unechoing street burnt in the heat of many tropical years. Sri Lanka, many tropical years she experienced, she lived here. For the mind, no longer sharp, seared by the tropical sun, skims over the surface of things like the wind that stirs but slightly the innocent dust. And Ranasinghe writes this poem through her own experience. She was also a victim of Nazi violence, and this poem describes about the violent events in Colombo that happened as she saw. She witnessed some events of violence in Sri Lanka also, because people took law into their hands, especially 83 July. And also some other events were also there, especially 71 insurgency, like that. The poet thus speaks about the man-made violence. She is satirical towards that. Why do men kill other men? Right? That's what she says. Environmental heat is not a fact for that. When there was winter, also Nazi violence occurred. Right. Here the poet talks about violence. The poet is satirical towards man making weapons against man. Okay, I will meet you in another poem. Goodbye.